Hey everyone, I'm going to see if this is recording. I'm not really sure, but anyway, I just got home from work. I'm literally just stripped off my work clothes and sat down at the computer because I needed to get something off my chest before. Yeah, anyway, at work, I just watched the new Humane Hancock video and just wanted to get some thoughts out there on it. I was listening to it on my earbuds, and I'm a fan of Humane Hancock. I really like his outreach. I think he's a really smart guy. Uh, but lately, I'm just not sure where he's going with what the things he has to say. So I wanted to review this video and just give you my thoughts on it. Here we go.
Great. So today I'm doing something that's a bit different. I want to talk about 4 things I've frequently observed over my time in the vegan community. Now, it's not like all vegans do these things, and some of the things we'll discuss in today's video are things I've also done in the past. But I think if we can do less of these things, then we'll be more successful at achieving our goals. I do, of course, think that being vegan is a really awesome thing. We have found out about the suffering endured by animals and decided to do something about it. Something that challenges the status quo and results in us being criticized and ridiculed by the majority. Anyone who, despite these difficulties, continues to be vegan because they don't want to exploit animals or cause them to suffer deserves a pat on the back. But in this video, I will instead focus on things that I think many of us, including myself at times, can get better at. Like a lot of communities, the vegan community can sometimes be a bit of an echo chamber. Ultimately, we want to hold as many true beliefs and as few false beliefs as possible, and as vegans, we want our messaging to be effective so that we can reduce as much animal suffering as possible.
Okay, this is where I got to stop because he keeps saying this over and over again. I think that I don't understand where he's going with this animal suffering. We're not here to stop animal suffering. We're here to liberate, emancipate, give them back their rights. That may come with suffering. For example, we have children, people. We don't live in a bubble. We want our liberation. We want our freedom. We want our rights. But suffering is a part of life. We're not trying to stop suffering. And from what I've seen of his other videos, and I think it was even, I think he had a talk with Alex O'Connor, Cosmic Skeptic, and maybe that's where Alex O'Connor got that language, was the stop suffering thing. And so they're talking about stopping the suffering of uh, of wild animals. That's not our responsibility. That's not what we're doing as animal rights activists or animal liberation activists, or that's not what our job here is. What our job here is to give them their rights and their freedoms. So this suffering, this concept of suffering, I don't know why he's so caught up on it.
That said, let's jump into it. Okay, number 1. Vegans should stop making empirically inaccurate or unsupported claims. Please don't cancel me. It's understandable in a way. People want to see change happen as quickly as possible, so it might be tempting to exaggerate claims to convince more people to join.
I've got a dog that's rolling around the floor being all happy. He's being silly, so I don't know if you can hear him, and that's why I stopped for a second. You done? Okay.
Cause. And we often create these community bubbles where claims often get regurgitated without sufficient fact-checking. I think that when vegans make incorrect claims, it really does undermine our credibility, and therefore hinders our movement. The truth is compelling enough. We don't need to lie or exaggerate in order to reach our goals. As an example of what I think is misinformation, some vegans claim that you don't need to take supplements to be healthy as a vegan. I don't think this is true. The evidence suggests that vegans should in fact be supplementing vitamin B12.
Okay, I don't have any problems with this first part. I don't have any. I think it's true. We shouldn't prop up, first of all, that it's a perfect diet, because it's not what it's about anyway. Supplementation is good, whether you're vegan or not. But to be honest with you, for the first 10 years that I was vegan, I didn't really take a B12 supplement. I do from time to time now, not daily. As I get older, I think more about supplementation, and I do try to take a multivitamin, but I don't freak out when I don't. Iodine did help me because I did get low thyroid, and I think that's because I cut salt, table salt, which has iodine, supplemented in it. I had cut that out for health reasons, and when I found out I had a low thyroid, and that most people that I knew did, and those are meat eaters and people who weren't necessarily watching their diet or doing a raw food diet or anything like that, like I had been, um, they're low on thyroid too, and they were on pills, and I just started putting table salt back in my diet. I do take iodine from now, every now and again, and I'm off the pills. I mean, I wasn't on the pills very long. So yeah, I mean, we should all be aware of these things. So I don't have any complaint or any arguments with what he's saying here. We shouldn't conflate that it's a healthy diet, because that's not what it's about anyway.
It's true that vitamin B12 deficiencies are common in meat eaters too. Evidence suggests that vegans are more likely to develop a B12 deficiency than non-vegans. So we should supplement vitamin B12 directly or eat fortified foods like mock meats. If we convince people to go vegan and they don't supplement vitamin B12, they're going to run into problems down the line, which means that our misinformation may result in them being less likely to stick to their vegan diet in the long term. Of course, I'm not a nutrition expert, so for those of you who are interested, you'll find an NHS resource in the description box of this video that will inform you on how to live healthy as a vegan. Supplementation or consuming fortified foods isn't something that's specific for vegans. I mean, meat eaters consume breakfast cereals that are fortified with vitamin.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should be taking vitamin D and stuff like that. I work outside and I still have to take vitamin D. Um, a lot of people work up north. We just don't, everybody, even meat eaters need this. And I don't know why meat eaters have such a problem with supplementation, because I mean, well, that's another thing an idea I want to make a video about, but it's ridiculous because actually this vitamin and supplement industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and most of those are not even vegan. So who's taking those? Who's been taking them all along? So why do they make such a big deal about it? But I'll make a video about that.
And drink milk that's fortified with vitamin A. And where I live in the UK, it's recommended that everyone takes a vitamin D supplement from October to March because it's unlikely that we're getting enough from sun exposure. Of course, in recent months, most of us are spending a lot more time at home to try and prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So it's even more important that we supplement vitamin D. In other words, don't be afraid of supplementation, and don't tell people that supplementation isn't necessary on a vegan diet, because vegans in particular should make sure they're getting enough vitamin B12 via supplementation, and that's okay. Hi guys.
That's fine.
My name is Jack.
This is funny. This is kind of cute.
I supplement vitamin B12. I don't inject it or anything, but I take it every day, orally. Hey Jack. Hey Jack. Hey Jack. It seems that some vegans really do exaggerate the health benefits of a vegan diet.
That's
Some
true.
people talk as if it's some kind of cure-all for health conditions. And look, there's no question that eating less animal products and eating more plants can significantly improve your health. We have scientific evidence that vegans on average are less likely to develop certain cancers, heart disease, and obesity. It's well accepted that a plant-based diet is healthier than a typical Western diet. But documentaries like What the Health have painted an exaggerated picture that is often regurgitated by vegans. It's important that we try not to be dogmatic and that we refrain from assuming a specific claim is true simply because it reinforces a belief we already hold. I think it's...
I agree with him on all this. That's the dangers of pushing this as a diet at all, is that you get people that go on it merely for diet reasons and they fall off later when they say their health went bad. It's ridiculous. It's not the reason we're going vegan.
Important that we don't undermine our credibility by spreading misinformation, exaggerations, and fear-mongering. We have enough empirical evidence to know that being vegan is doable and perfectly healthy. We don't need to exaggerate, and doing so is probably harmful overall. Okay, let's move on to point number 2. It's common for meat eaters to say that humanity has killed and eaten animals for most of its evolutionary history. And they're right about that, but many go on to make the argument that because eating meat is natural, it's not something we should stop doing. Now, some vegans will engage in a debate about whether or not eating meat is natural. Modern farms are the result of aggressive artificial breeding that results in animals producing far more meat, dairy, and eggs than they would naturally. Chickens raised for meat today are over 4 times larger than they were in the 1960s. Farmed animals are given numerous antibiotics, hormones, and other synthetic chemicals, and they're farmed in environments that are unrecognizable from the diverse ecosystems where their ancestors lived. But virtually no modern food is natural. Pretty much all organisms used for food, including plants, have been selectively bred to improve their quality, their productivity, and their edibility.
Now, I do agree with him a little bit on this because we really shouldn't get caught up in those arguments, but I have done it because it's mainly to shut them down because people really think that they've shut down your reasoning um, or any reasoning to be vegan. And really, it's a moral issue, not whether it's nothing's natural nowadays. So sometimes I have engaged in this and just to shut them down and be like, well, it's not natural that we forcibly breed and imprison animals. That's not natural. So I try, if I do ever engage in that, I try to make it very short just to shut down their line of thinking and get back to the moral reasons, the ethical reasons.
Crops like bananas and corn are unrecognizable when placed next to their natural counterparts. So while it's true that our current consumption of animals isn't natural, advocates should remember that naturalness is not what people should care about. Even if killing animals and eating their bodies is natural, that doesn't mean that it's a morally acceptable thing to do.
I have actually actually had somebody that tried to have that argument with me one time when he had a bag of Doritos in his hand. And I just laughed at him and he shut up.
Definitively conclude that something is good because it's natural is known by philosophers as an appeal to nature, a well-known logical fallacy. Murder and rape and abuse have existed throughout most of our evolutionary history, but that doesn't mean that they're good or desirable. In fact, we do unnatural things like giving people medicine or providing natural disaster relief to defend people against the unfavorable state of the natural world and humanity. It's not uncommon to hear vegans say that drinking cow's milk is unnatural. And yes, it is unnatural. But so are vaccines, refrigerators, toilets, and air conditioning. Things that literally exist because they're better solutions to our needs than what nature gave us. In other words, meat eaters should stop using eating meat is natural as an argument for buying meat. And vegans should stop using drinking milk is unnatural as an argument against drinking milk. Naturalness is irrelevant to the discussion on how we ought to behave. An unhelpful approach I sometimes see in the vegan community is to have a very black and white perspective. For example, it's not vegan or you're an animal abuser. I think this is a very simplistic way of looking at the situation, and it's likely to be very counterintuitive and alienating to most non-vegans. Now imagine if someone used to be a heavy meat eater, and after watching footage of factory farming, they've gradually cut out every animal product they eat, apart from cheese. Now if someone tells you this and you respond with, well, you're either vegan or you're an animal abuser, that might feel very disempowering for them. We should acknowledge how far people have come and positively reinforce desirable behaviors. If someone has empathy,
I kind of disagree with this. Well, I do disagree with this. I mean, I see where he's trying to come from, but no, the problem is we need not, this isn't about us. It's not about empowering us. It's about empowering animals, non-human animals. That's our message. It's not about us. That's why it's not a health thing. That's why it's not a diet. It's not about us. So I think staying firm, I'm sorry. I'm not going to, I'm just not going to pat somebody on the back, like you said earlier, for baby steps. I'm not.
animals and decided to make significant lifestyle changes, that's great, even if they haven't reached veganism yet. I want to show you a clip from a talk by Tobias.
See, all right, this is what stopped me in my tracks at work. I can't believe he's going here. Tobias is like the male version of unnatural vegan. I like to call her unvegan. I can't believe he's going here. Is he becoming a reducitarian? That's why I'm confused.
In a year, that's 1,095 meals. Suppose that one of those meals is not vegan. You see the little dot there? One of those meals is not vegan. And that means that there's still potatoes and vegetables and there's maybe like a fish or whatever. So 1/3 of that meal is not vegan, right? So that's 0.03% of your meals is not vegan. Is that enough to say to a person, no, you're not vegan?
If they tell me about it, it is.
Don't belong to the club. You cannot call yourself a vegan, even though there are so much club.
If they told me about it, that's their fault. Yes, I'm going to call it out as not vegan. And if they feel compelled to tell me about it, then maybe they know that already.
To being vegan than to anything else, than to vegetarian or whatever.
I think a more encouraging, supportive attitude is more likely to lead to this person cutting out more animal products rather than suggesting that this person's efforts are worthless. If we suggest that everyone who isn't vegan is an animal abuser, if we set the bar that high to avoid the label animal abuser, we're going to alienate people who aren't there while we
The bar how high? Just not hurting other animals? It's a non-action. How is that such a high bar to avoid animal products and exploiting animals? I'm very confused by this attitude.
encouraging them. If our language suggests that there's no difference between eating meat 3 times a day and being vegan apart from honey, we might make it more likely that people
Being vegan apart from honey, how does that work?
try to change at all, because veganism might seem too difficult or perhaps even impossible for people who are currently eating animal products for every meal of every day.
No. It's not hard or impossible at all. These are people that are making excuses. I'm not going to pat them on the back.
Firstly, I promote a strong vegan message, and my values haven't changed.
Really?
I still want to help as many animals as possible. But
See, again, here he goes. I want to help as many animals as possible. He's worrying about the suffering of individual animals, whereas we just want the liberation, emancipation, the rights given back to animals. It's not about, I mean, of course we could save animals here and there and, like, you know, liberate a chicken, or, you know, we want to help animals, you know, adopt a dog or take a stray and off the street or something like that on an individual basis. But that is not the goal of vegan animal rights message, okay, or what our mission is. That's not our mission.
I think we often create too much division between ourselves and non-vegans. Rather than seeing one as
We do that? It's us.
animal abuser and the other as a saint, why don't we stress our shared goal of helping?
Who the fuck said we were saints? Just because you're not an animal abuser certainly doesn't make you a saint. Just because you're a vegan doesn't mean you're not an asshole. That's not the point. It just means stop hurting others while you're doing it. You know, I mean, that's all we're asking for. It's not about us, and it's not about our saintlyhood or being morally superior to anybody. Just stop hurting animals. It's just a justice thing. I'm not a saint just because I'm not racist. I'm not a saint because I don't go out and kick a homeless person. Doesn't mean I'm saying I'm a saint. It's just a fact. You're either you're hurting, and this word abuse kind of bothers me. You're exploiting and harming animals, or you're not. I suppose the word abuse is within the realm of exploitation, but it just sounds more like a welfarist word.
We're going to be more convincing to non-vegans if we have a shared perspective and reinforce the shared goal that most people have of making the world a better place. And just to be clear, I understand why some vegans call...
I got something to say about making the world a better place too. That's for another time.
All non-vegans animal abusers. If you buy these products, you are contributing to animal abuse. If we say that's enough to label someone as an abuser, then yes, technically that's right. I mean, it seems reasonable to call someone an abuser who is causing animals to be abused.
Actually, this approach does work very well. I've seen a lot of it, you know, I've done it in the cube myself, or saying, you know, it's hypocritical or whatever. And people are quite, I don't know if I want to use the word open. Well, I guess, you know, nobody's gotten pissed off. You know, the way I look at it is you treat people like adults, so act like adults. You treat them like children, they're going to act like children. And the responses have not been overwhelmingly, they've been positive when you just are straightforward with somebody. Most people do appreciate when you don't, you know, when you don't treat them like children. So I think he's wrong here.
issue is that it's not going to be convincing for most people. We should avoid directly insulting people during outreach.
That doesn't have to be insulting. It's just facts. A lot of people are not insulted by that. It depends on how you say it. I'm not screaming it in their face. I'm just laying out a fact, and most people agree with that. They're like, yeah, you're right.
And I don't think this black and white thinking applied to people is going to help us reach our goal. If you buy one slice of cheese per year, you're not contributing as much as someone who buys meat 3 times a day.
What? What's with the reducitarian thing here? Okay? Again, our goal isn't to reduce suffering. Our goal is liberation. I'm looking at me instead of the camera. Sorry, that's just a reflex. Yeah. No. All right. Let me see where I should put the next part of what I want to say.
Not to say it's morally acceptable to buy cheese once a year. It's just that if we don't differentiate between these two behaviors, I think it makes us seem unrelatable to non-vegans. I think that
I'm not worried about being relatable. I'm worried about getting the message out there. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but this is bothering me. It sounds like a very reducitarian message.
much focus on people who are 90% of the way there. There is far more value on focusing on the people who consume lots of animal products. For example, getting the person who eats cheese once a year to stop isn't going to help as many animals as getting the heavy meat eater to cut his consumption in half. And that's not to say that we shouldn't try to convince the person to give up cheese. We should encourage them and give them resources because they're probably going to be low-hanging fruit for further behavior change. But if
Well, that's not necessarily true, because I find a lot of people who are vegetarians are hard-headed about this, and they defend themselves harder than even a full-blown meat eater. A lot of them actually know what they're contributing to, but want to have that attitude of I'm doing enough. And they're harder to get through to than full-blown meat eaters. So
care about helping as many animals as possible, we should focus our time and our efforts.
it's not about helping as many animals as possible. It's about liberating all animals.
And our conversations within the vegan community on influencing the people who are consuming animal products every day. Getting 10 people to be 50% vegan is going to help more animals than getting one person to be 100% vegan. And if our goal is to end animal farming, we need to
See, all right, this, what he's doing here, he is worrying about numbers. And that's ridiculous when we already know that even though veganism is going up, that the amount of animals dying continues to soar because of subsidies. So what we have to do is consistently stay with our moral and ethical argument for veganism. We need to stand our ground. The way he's talking, this is the way I look at it. Let's say you have blue corn seeds, yellow corn seeds. The blue corn seeds represent reducitarianism. The yellow corn seeds represent the liberation message. They represent animal liberation. If you want yellow corn to grow, are you going to keep planting the blue corn seeds and expecting yellow corn? You're going to keep planting those blue corn seeds and going, why the hell can't I get yellow corn? Just plant the yellow corn from the beginning. I hope that made sense.
How we're going to get there. Are we going to get there by convincing everyone to go vegan? No. Some people just aren't willing to go vegan in the current society. But we need as many people as possible to work together in the fight to abolish animal farming. You might think it's unrealistic to suggest that non-vegans will help us get there, but
we do need as many people in the fight as possible, but not just to end animal farming. There's so many other ways we exploit animals. It's not just like not just farming. We need to change attitudes across the board, and and the only way to do that is to hold strong to our consistent message of no less than animal liberation. This baby step shit is just going. It's not going to stop suffering. It's just it's not even reducing suffering because of subsidies. It's prolonging it. That's what baby steps do. Prolong it.
Research suggests that 47% of US adults support a ban on slaughterhouses. If you were just looking at the number of vegans in the world, you would never imagine that there was this much support for a ban on slaughterhouses, but there is. And it suggests that we may be able to take radical steps to ending animal farming with the support of people who aren't willing to go vegan right now. And it would be tactically unwise to ignore that opportunity for support or to prevent that momentum from growing by labeling these people as animal abusers. This black and white thing.
Labeling them, that's just a fact. People are never going to change if you don't tell them the facts. I changed because I was told the cold hard facts. Nobody held my hand.
Is also apparent in the way vegans sometimes treat each other. Online, at least, there seems to be a lot of vegans calling each other out for not being true vegans or 100% vegan, and people are acting as if they know with certainty what other people's true intentions are. It seems to me that some vegans are more focused on criticizing other vegans who aren't perfect, rather than engaging with meat eaters about animal suffering. Some people learn about the early proponents of the vegan movement.
No, I would like to engage, that's why I do cubes, but with people who aren't vegan. I don't really like to argue with fellow vegans. However, when I see stuff like this, I think that, I need to critique what's going on, because I feel like the reason we're fighting each other is because some vegans are pulling animals out of the water, out of a raging river, and then there's some vegans behind us throwing them back in with their messaging. So one step forward, two steps back. And yeah, it's sad that you even have to address this.
Like Donald Watson or Tom Reagan, and they find early definitions of veganism and then criticize other vegans or activists who aren't adhering closely enough to a philosophy from the 1940s. Similar to how fundamentalist Christians will call out other Christians for not adhering closely enough to their religious scripture. And some of these people act as if the activists who are in line with Donald Watson or Tom Reagan's philosophy are correct and pure, and the other vegans just simply don't understand veganism properly. Ultimately, what's important isn't that we feel pure or correct, or that we adhere perfectly to a philosophy from a pioneer in the 1940s. What's important is that we help.
Well, I do agree, when you mix in politics and all that stuff in there, that's where, people fight over what veganism really is. But I believe it's just, refraining from exploiting animals, fighting for their liberation, plain and simple. Maybe not that plain and simple, but you know what I mean. My thoughts every time I do this are a lot clearer when I'm at work in my own head. My words flow through my head in a very comprehensive way. I find that when I go to get those thoughts out, my thoughts are running way faster than I can get them out. And that's why I tend to stutter or repeat myself or forget where I was. So I need to figure out a way to deal with that.
Animals as effectively as possible. The outcomes for the animals should be the focus, not the purity of the vegans. And we can acknowledge that it's near impossible to live life without causing some harm or exploitation to non-human animals. The ways our purchasing behaviors We know that even purchasing plants causes harm to wild animals, and there's probably going to be some harm caused to humans in the production line of a lot of the products we buy. And the focus on the purity of the vegan is not only losing sight of what really matters, but it's a bit of an impossible game to win. To illustrate my point, take a look at this.
It's not easy to see what 100% vegan is. Okay, there are by definition almost fuzzy borders. Like if you look at this scale here, it goes from like big ingredients to micro ingredients, like things.
Casein and otherwise vegan cheese. No, it's not otherwise vegan cheese.
At what point is somebody vegan? Okay, so you could say that you're only vegan.
It's not vegan cheese at all.
Studied by heart this little book with 300 pages of possibly non-vegan ingredients. Okay, this is hard to do.
I don't know any vegans that really nitpick like this.
Learn the book by heart and say, I'm the true vegan. Okay, and so you can have a situation.
I think this is exaggerating a bit.
There's another vegan who is more vegan, and we can all tell each other you're not vegan, and this person tells the other one you're not vegan, etc. We can play that game ad nauseum, ad infinitum, and it's not productive. It's not useful.
An example of a focus on purity rather than outcomes for the animals is the opposition to vegans who consume non-vegan products they find during dumpster diving. If someone looks through a bin and finds some cow's milk and they decide to take it home and drink it, is it really appropriate to say that they're not vegan anymore?
Is it appropriate? You know, you've heard horror stories about babies being thrown in dumpsters. Now, if I ran across, I went dumpster diving and I ran across a baby in a dumpster and I ate it, is that okay? Or is your speciesism going to be showing?
Are we really going to say that, even though their consumption has no direct impact on demand and therefore doesn't harm any animals? It is an interesting question to discuss, though, because you could make an argument that there are some negative knock-on effects of consuming animal products you find in bins. For example, it can be argued that by doing so, you're normalizing animal product consumption. And so someone might see you and then be more likely to buy more animal products themselves. Although I'm not sure how much people will be encouraged to buy meat if they see someone eating it out of a bin.
Chicken, you want to avoid the bits of hair.
Yummy. But there could be other factors too. For example, psychological research suggests that when people consume animal products, they assign fewer mental faculties to farmed animals than people who eat a plant-based snack.
This is true. I mean, just like I said, if I found a baby in a dumpster, that'd be horrifying, right? Because we won't consider babies or human babies, you know what I mean here, food. But if we're eating or drinking milk, we're considering that food. So it is a psychological thing. So yes, that is exactly how it's connected. That's why it's wrong.
Consuming animal products, even out of a bin, might reduce your concern for farmed animals, which might increase the likelihood that your behavior changes in ways that does harm animals.
I'm not going to eat a diaper out of the bin. You know why? I don't look at it as food.
So we can certainly make arguments as to why consuming animal products from a bin may cause more harm down the line, and there's nothing wrong with discussing that. But I think suggesting that they're not truly vegan, even though they might care deeply about animal suffering, is unfair and unhelpful. But anyway, I don't want to spend any more time talking about bins. My point here is that this black and white thinking is probably unhelpful, and our attention needs to be on how we can best help animals, not on calling people out who don't live up to our standards of what a true vegan is. I do want to say that the question of how we can most effectively advocate for animals is obviously a very complex one. I have tried to think about this from both sides, and I'm aware that in my early days of veganism, I was much less pragmatic than I'm coming across in this video. Of course, I could be wrong about all of this, and you're welcome to try and change my mind if you disagree with me. Okay, so another point is the lack of empathy some vegans have for meat eaters. Obviously, vegans are very empathetic towards animals, and that's why most people go vegan in the first place. But some vegans do seem to have a lack of empathy in the way they talk about and treat non-vegans. Now, perhaps you're thinking, why on earth should we have empathy for perpetrators of violence?
It's not necessarily a lack of empathy for the person. It's a lack of empathy for what they're doing to others, for their actions. I live with a person who's a meat eater. My mom and her husband aren't vegan. I have relationships with them. I can have empathy with them and certain situations in their lives that, like my mom gets sick or, something, happens to my roommate that, ruined his day or whatever. But when it comes to him bringing home meat or dairy, no, my empathy is shut off for that. And my mom knows that too. Yeah.
It's the animals who deserve our empathy. They're the ones being tortured on factory farms because Dave wants to have bacon and eggs for breakfast. And to address that, I want to show you another
And that's
clip
what we're
from
not
Tobias.
empathetic about with
I can
Dave.
imagine that there's people thinking here like, oh, there's definitely some people we don't need empathy for. People who are really, really not nice. Can you think of some people like that? They were recently in the news. These people, right? Do we need empathy for them? Well, I think it might be useful. And I just want to illustrate with this guy. This is Daryl Davis. He's a black guy, and he grew up outside of America, and he came back to America when he was 10, and he had no experience with racism whatsoever. And he was walking into a march, and he was the only black kid, and all of a sudden people were throwing things at him. It was in the 1960s or 70s. Throwing cans and bottles and bricks at him. And he just didn't understand. He said, what is this about? And he found out about racism. And he wondered, like, how can these people hate me if they don't even know me? And what he did was he went to Ku Klux Klan people, and
Because people are assholes. That's how they could do it.
he befriended them, and he spoke to them, and he listened to them, and he was open to them, and he showed empathy towards them. And the result was that he was able to get 200 people outside of the Ku Klux Klan. He got them to give them their capes, their robes to him, and they left the Klan.
What?
Okay, but I don't think this is a really great comparison here to, because you'd have to compare it to this man. He didn't know what racism was when it happened. You'd have to compare him to one of the Klan's members that left the Klan because they were ex-racist. We were ex-meat eaters. And yes, we do need to go in and talk to meat eaters. Do we need to necessarily have empathy for it? No, not always, because we saw how it's easy to change. And we can have the discussions with them. But I would say I probably the patience level would be less. But I don't know if you really compare that to a man who went in who had no idea what it was like, because you'd have to compare him to one of the Klan members going in and getting those Klan members to quit. And I think they would be more straight talking because they know the line of bullshit that they were living. I don't know if I'm getting my thoughts out straight. It was straight in my head earlier. I get home and that's why I wanted to do this so quick.
Amazing story. It seems that empathy makes us more effective. And it's easy to feel empathy for non-vegans because most vegans were once not vegan. And it's obvious that most people aren't eating animals because they want them to be exploited or to suffer. Most people eat meat because most people eat meat. It's a social norm.
That's why it should be easy. That's why we see that it should be so easy to quit. Because you're just doing it for tradition or habit. It is not a drug that you cannot leave. And that's what makes us somewhat impatient and lacking empathy sometimes when people are told the truth and they still refuse to quit. But yeah, we do have these conversations with meat eaters. It's just that, we don't mess around because, the best way is to be straightforward about it. These are just facts.
And remember that to empathize with someone isn't to say that you agree with what they're doing. It's about trying to understand their perspective and acknowledging their feelings, their struggles, and their desires. If you're struggling to empathize with non-vegans, remind yourself that most people do care about animals. Look at the love and compassion people have for their cats and dogs. In many cases, cats and dogs are treated as members of the family, and many meat eaters would risk their lives to save their cat or dog from a fire.
My roommate had a pig. He had a pet pig years ago. He eats bacon.
Just look at how much compassion people can have for animals. That's something we can work with. While this video has been a bit negative about some of the patterns I see in the vegan movement, I want to end on a positive by saying that I think we should be very optimistic about the future. Veganism is growing. There is an animal rights revolution happening right now, and animal-free alternatives are booming. Much like the way motor vehicles replaced horses in our transport system, animal-free meat can end animal farms and slaughterhouses. Recently in Singapore, the first ever clean meat product was approved for sale.
No, see, all right, here I don't agree with lab-grown meat. And I know that I'm probably going to have some pushback from that, but I don't care because you're not changing hearts and minds about animals being commodities for their flesh or being, you know, for consumption by eating lab-grown meat. We have plenty of alternatives right now that there's absolutely no reason to grow flesh. Just cut it out. Anyway, this is about the end of his video, so I'm going to end mine. I probably made that way longer than I should have, and I don't even know if I'm going to post this, but I wanted to get it off my chest. So have a great day, everybody. Bye.